Welcome back, everybody. I hope you've had a nice break. We're ready for the second part of this meeting, for the second half. But just before we get going, please do unmute yourself and ask questions and comments, whatever you have. It's great for all of us to share our experiences, our opinions, our understandings, and to be able to discuss these. So please don't hesitate in unmuting yourself, asking a question, passing a comment, raise a hand. If you really don't want to do it, put it in the chat, but it's nicer to do it in person and to express your opinion or ask your question. So our first talk to start with now is from Shabiha Azam, who works for Johnson & Johnson, as you can tell from the background on her that she has. And she's going to talk to us about diversity and inclusion, the power of mentoring relationships. Thank you very much, Shabiha.
Thank you very much, Mahmoud, and good afternoon, everybody. So yes, I'm Shabiha Azam, and I predominantly work within medical education as a course coordinator for Diffuse Synthes. So you may have heard of Ethicon, and we're all part of the medical devices companies under the J&J umbrella. But I also lead the Black, Asian, Minority and Ethnic Employee Resource Group for Johnson & Johnson for the whole of Med Devices UK and Ireland. And as we just alluded to today, I'll be covering the importance of the role that mentoring can play within the concept of diversity and inclusion. Now, before we dive kind of straight into mentoring, I wanted to touch on the importance of what diversity and inclusion is in the workplace. So for example, here at Johnson & Johnson, we want everyone to feel like that they can truly belong and really believe like they can fulfill their development, you know, that everyone has the equal opportunity to prosper and reach their full potential, regardless of their race, creed, class, even sexual orientation, as well as gender. So, however, this at times, a lot of the times it can be easier said than done. But recently there's been many government-backed reports, such as the Parker report, you've heard of the McKinsey report, and also there's been the Gartner review, which have all highlighted the poor truth that when it comes to ethnic diversity, there's a very big gap within the businesses. One kind of statistic to quote is that in the top FTSE 100 group of companies, less than 2% of director level personnel are from a BAME background. If you then look to the NHS, there was a recent report from the Royal College of Physicians which found that doctors from a Black, Asian and minority ethnic background have been hindered in their search for senior roles because of widespread discrimination. So you can see that the Royal College of Physicians, which represents roughly around 30,000 of the UK's hospital doctors, found that there was an ingrained bias within the NHS, which has made it much harder for doctors of the BAME background to become consultants compared to their white counterparts. One of the statistics to quote from this report, which is based on a survey of approximately 400 newly qualified consultants in 2019, said that 29% of white respondents were offered a post after being shortlisted for the first time, compared with just 12% of BAME respondents. So you can see from those statistics, ethnic diversity, especially at senior roles, is struggling. And this is where traditional methods, when tailored, such as mentoring, can be delivered to address the imbalance. So if we just move on to the next slide. So the BME Employee Resource Group at Johnson & Johnson has done exactly that. And what we needed to do was look clearly at what we need to define and what we need to do in order to achieve true diversity and inclusion. If you look, you can see our vision is very clear. It's to achieve ethnic diversity across our business, which is reflective of the population that we live and both work in, to also enhance our competitive advantage and also fuel the future of human health. And how do we propose we do that? We want to have a purpose, which is to foster an inclusive organisation environment which champions the advancement of all minorities, so the meritocratic advancement of all ethnic minorities. And if you look, the way we propose that we're doing that within Johnson & Johnson is we have 4 strategic pillars. Within those 4 strategic pillars, we have awareness, retention and development, and then recruitment, as well as equality. And I'm just going to quickly touch on each of those pillars so you can see what we're doing and how that's affecting our business. So awareness, because we all know differences, but do we really understand them? Do we even embrace them, or do we even encourage them? You know, awareness requires a build-up of education so that we can champion the differences that exist between us. And within this area, you know, we have run a lot of successful campaigns, and one of the ones that I wanted to mention is one which we call the Celebration of Life Comms. Now, this goes out to over 5,000 UK staff, and it celebrates the different events in religions, cultures, backgrounds, beliefs, and really gets everybody talking about these celebrations so we can have those interactive conversations and build our knowledge. We also introduced an internal diversity and inclusion app, which is on your handheld devices, which provides simple and access to all diversity, inclusion and resources. We then looked at retention and development. Now, retention and development, as I mentioned in the introduction, from the surveys that were done by the Royal College of Physicians, as well as the corporate staff stats, colleagues from, you know, from a BAME background face a much tougher development challenge compared to their non-BAME counterparts. One of the statistics, so another statistics from the Royal College of Physicians article, which is quite incredible when you read it, is that a study found Black doctors earn almost 10,000 less a year than their white counterparts. And here at J&J, we introduced a BAME talent pool for succession so that we know we're being fair and transparent, and we're actually having a strong succession planning for BAME development, which incorporates all the different elements, but also mentoring, which we'll come on to in just a minute. So recruitment, I think we'll all agree, much like retention and development, recruitment this time focuses more so on the unconscious biases that prevent people from a BME background from being hired, and also extends to kind of the external reputation of an organisation. You know, are we actually perceived as an employer of choice for top BAME talent, and do we have a good reputation for the fair treatment of BAME candidates? You know, recruitment in itself is really incredibly important if you are to build a diverse workforce. Some of the work streams that we've done within the recruitment field is that we've created positive actions for BAME candidates, and positive action within itself is defined under the Equality Act of 2010, which is selecting candidates based on protected characteristics such as race, but on their meritocratic advancement. We've also encouraged worked with external partners, you know, with our communities and customers such as the NHS, to showcase our commitment to diversity and inclusion, and that also extends to doing more than just what a lot of organisations tend to do, which is lip service. So it's actual actions as well as accountability. And then our final pillar, which we looked at, which is equality. Now, equality really underpins all three of these areas. You know, if you don't have racial injustice and you don't have equality, then you can't achieve successful succession planning in any of these relationships, including mentoring. And for BAME staff, you know, for the years ahead, we need to ensure that you have the pipeline. So to define racial injustice and equality is also, it's important to understand and distinguish the differences between D&I and racial injustice and inequality. And I guess a perfect example I can share that with you here is that, you know, George Floyd died because of racism and not because he had a problem with diversity and inclusion in his neighbourhood. So it's important that when we're addressing diversity and inclusion, we also look at equality. And all this, again, is underpinned by the work that we'll move on to next, which is all about the traditional mentoring relationships which we've taken and tailored into this programme. So if I move on to the next slide. There you go. So these are the two areas that I wanted to touch upon, which are our enhanced traditional mentoring relationship, as well as reverse mentoring relationships. So the one in the blue, you know, you've all probably had mentors. I've certainly had a mentor for majority of my career at J&J, and you know, if you are from a BAME background, sometimes the traditional mentoring backgrounds can lack the structure and the guidance needed. If you have a look at some of the roadmap points that we've highlighted in the blue section there. So for example, if you're from a BAME background, very often you're taught about respecting authority. You're spoken to about how you need to work twice as hard to be able to achieve as much as your peers. And quite often you're told not to stand out and stick out from the crowd, and you know, not to stand up for being different and really just blend in the background. So where we have mentoring relationships, if you've got a senior mentor who doesn't quite understand your background, you know, your traditions, your culture, you know, it's hard for them to be able to connect with you to actually make you prosper in every part of your being in order to develop you. So this is where the BAME Employee Resource Group has really put together resources which help senior leaders. And, you know, even within our organization, our senior leaders tend to be from a non-BAME background. And what we've done is worked with them to actually understand the concept about being BAME and how we've had a different upbringing to those that are non-BAME. So I think it's important to understand that. And we have seen a lot of success within here, so that senior mentors who can actually experience and have that experience of working with BAME candidates and actually be able to give them the business acumen tailored to them, so it brings out a strong objective for them to be able to progress a specific diverse candidate group. And, you know, this enhanced traditional kind of mentoring relationship doesn't need to, you know, stop at ethnicity. It can be for, you know, for women in leadership, as well as those with disabilities. So taking the traditional mentoring relationship but enhancing it to be able to deliver it to a particular cohort is very important, and that's one of the things that we've really invested in, and we've seen a lot of positive feedback received from those relationships so far. Now, the other one that I wanted to touch base on was the one in the red, which is the reverse mentoring relationship scheme. So this is where the mentors are the BAME colleagues, and quite often the BAME colleagues are the colleagues at the lower level. So the mentors are the BAME colleagues and the mentee are the senior leaders. So it's the reverse mentoring relationship. However, within our BAME Employee Resource Group, we like to call it a two-way mentoring scheme, because not only do senior leaders actually benefit from the lived experiences of being BAME and, you know, all the obstacles that, you know, from people from a BAME background feel and experience, they also then gain the business acumen from senior leaders. Now, this scheme has been running for quite a number of months this year, and it's been one of the most successful schemes to date when it comes to mentoring within Johnson & Johnson. And that's purely because there is growth on both sides, and there's a genuine want to be able to move the needle when it comes to diversity and inclusion, to actually make our workplace truly diverse, which, you know, does what our vision said and really champions the meritocratic advancement of all ethnic minorities. So within that reverse mentoring scheme, not only do you upskill and you have the transfer of business acumen, the main objective of it is that you then breed diverse leaders. You have leaders who are able to cascade down within their business units, within their groups, you know, the importance of hiring diverse. When we did some anecdotal feedback, you know, very often managers self-hire, so it's like mirror hiring, those that look like them, those that they can see socializing with, you know, those that they can have a good conversation with. And a lot of the times, if they have two candidates, one is BAME and one is non-BAME, their default reaction is to go with the one that will fit best within their teams. And if they have an already existing non-diverse team, then they will pluck for the non-diverse candidate. So this reverse mentoring relationship is incredibly important because it allows people to connect with people with different experiences, and it actually helps hiring managers to realize that difference is the good thing, and it's something that we should all be embracing. So just to conclude on those slides, you know, whether it be the NHS or whether it be in the corporate world, it's unacceptable in this day and era for anyone to be treated unfairly, you know, because of their race or any other protected characteristics. And everyone should have the same opportunities to fill their potential. And if there is a bias that prevents that from happening, then we need to remove them. You know, work streams in education and recruitment, as well as equality, can help make that difference. And I was just wanted to allude on one fact. For example, you know, the commitment from our side is so strong that our credo, which is our values, has been translated into 35 different languages across the whole world and can be found in 800 different buildings across the globe. And that's just reaffirming our commitment when it comes to diversity and inclusion, when it comes to these mentoring relationships, and when it comes to the meritocratic advancement of everybody that works. And this has been very key throughout our organisation. And if there's one action that I would really like everyone to take away from this session is that, you know, have a look at your departments, review your trusts or your departments and your current hierarchy, and identify where there is a lack of ethnic diversity or where you need to work with your teams to create successful work streams which are tailored when it comes to mentoring relationships to help drive the changes needed. And moving forward, you know, I'd love to hear what work is being done, and we'd like to connect with organisations outside of ours so that we can, you know, share best practices as well as kind of share our experiences of doing what we're doing, especially with the mentoring schemes. So as we draw to an end now, I'll quite happily leave my details behind. So please, if you do need to contact me, you can do to me or Alison, and we'd be happy to carry the conversation on. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Shabiha, for your talk. It is very interesting to see it from an industry perspective, but this happens everywhere. Does anybody have any questions? Rajesh, please, and then Narain.
Yes. Thank you. I really enjoyed that presentation, Shabiha. Thank you for that. Two things. Okay, number one, how long have you introduced this policy within J&J? That's one. And second is you will be measuring. How will you measure success of introduction of this policy?
Sure. So in question to your first answer, so the employee resource group has been around about 12 to 18 months, but probably in the last 12 months is where we've had the most action of our work streams being implemented. And then as regards to how do we measure, so I guess diversity you can measure in numbers. You know, you can count ethnicity as you can count gender, but how do you measure inclusivity? Now, for inclusivity, yes, we have annual surveys that go out to see how people are feeling, but to actually know how people are feeling in their minds and hearts, we've been visualizing how we've been progressing with colleagues, so the interaction. So for example, I mentioned the Celebration of Life campaign. So at the beginning of the year, we kind of selected 12 events that people might have heard of, such as Diwali, such as, you know, Yom Kippur, and really turned them into communications and sent them out. By the time we'd reached mid-year, we were actually getting shout outs from the, you know, colleagues coming in saying, oh, by the way, we've got a festival. Like we had one, for example, just now, which was the Mid-Chinese Autumn Festival. And that wasn't on our plan, but that was coming in from people saying, oh, can we please have this? So that to us shows that we're moving the needle on inclusivity, because people actually truly feel like they belong so that they can request their shout outs. So hopefully that answers that, Rajesh.
Excellent. Narain, you had a question?
Thank you, Mahmoud. Thank you, Shabiha. That's an excellent presentation, and it's really insightful because at the moment we are developing our own society in equality and diversity policy. So it's really interesting to see how we've developed and evolved it over the past few years. Some of the things that get sort of put back to us, one of the things is about positive discrimination, to make sure what you are introducing is done on a meritocratic basis. And another comment that's often made is, well, we just want to be included as an individual. We don't want to be attributed to our ethnic background or our gender. So I don't want a specific mentoring program for women or for ethnic background. So just how you've addressed those challenges, because it's something we as a society are very keen of evolving and trying to make sure our specialty is representative of that, because we know the impact it has on not only the workforce, but also the clinical outcomes for patients.
Sure. So when it comes to, so we've got it's important to decipher the two. So we have positive discrimination, which isn't allowed in the UK. So it's banned under the Equality Act 2010. But what is allowed is positive action. So we can positive action when it comes to protected characteristics. So you can plug for the candidate which on merit, qualifies for the job and they have a protected characteristics, for example, such as their race, but you can't positively discriminate and say we want to hire 10 BAME candidates, for example, unless you're doing it in a positive action way, if that makes sense. So, I mean, a lot of the challenges that we had that, you're quite right. Sometimes having these kind of employee resource groups can sometimes feel a little exclusive. And certainly when I looked to myself, I thought, as a woman, do I need to belong in the women's group, or as a BAME individual, do I need to belong in the BAME group? So you can feel as though they're being a little bit exclusive. But I guess what we've done in our defence is that because we have quite a number of employee resource groups, the diversity and inclusion app that I mentioned is all about driving intersectionality. So it's all about having simple diversity inclusion all together, so that you're not kind of putting people into buckets, and you're actually progressing people, mentoring people from all different types of diversities. So I guess that takes the label off people and just pushes them on their development, on just being them. So we've taken a lot of measures to do that, so that we're not kind of just segregating people in buckets, and really driving that inclusivity as a whole.
Excellent. Thank you very much for this talk. It's brilliant, and this topic can go on for hours to discuss it and how to best go about it. Thank you very much for your contribution.